This is the Buffett Mindset channel where we practice patience and calm wealth building daily. If you enjoy these types of videos, consider liking and subscribing. This will mean a lot to the channel. You must see now why most men never touch wealth. It is not cause the road is hidden, but because they refuse to believe it is theirs to walk. They spend years studying the wages of labor, but never the wages of thought. They learn the trades of the world, but never the laws of the mind. And so they wonder why, after decades of toil, they are still poor in purse and poorer still in spirit. The tragedy is not that they worked hard. The tragedy is that they never worked rightly. Let me bring you to a truth that most will ignore, because it does not flatter the ego. A man becomes rich not by hours, but by habits. The richest man you know does not possess more hours than you. He has 24 in his day, you have in yours. What separates him is not time, but what he compounds within it. He does not waste his mind on cheap thought, his tongue on idle complaint, his hours on meaningless distraction. He compounds belief, he compounds discipline, he compounds investment in himself until wealth becomes unavoidable. Buffett himself, the Oracle of Omaha, has repeated this law until the world tires of hearing it. Compound is the 8th wonder of the world. But do men listen? No. They nod, they admire, they quote him at dinner tables, and then they go home and live as though compound were a myth. They trade their power for immediate pleasure, their fortune for instant comfort. They rake the law of wealth and wonder why poverty clings to them like a shadow. Listen to me carefully, for realize the very law that will either crown you or condemn you. Compound does not only apply to money, it applies to thought, it applies to faith, it applies to discipline. Every belief you repeat daily compounds into identity. Every habit you perform compounds into destiny. If you waste your mornings, if you scatter your attention, if you indulge your weaknesses, those choices compound silently into chains that bind you. But if you guard your thought, if you repeat purpose with precision, if you train your actions like a craftsman sharpening steel, those choices compound into freedom. Consider a simple example. A man who saves a single dollar and invests it with discipline may, in time, turn it into thousands. But the same man, if he saves no thought, if he invests no faith, if he compounds only fear, will in time turn even thousands into nothing. Do you see it? Compound is not about the coin, it is about the consciousness. You cannot build financial wealth without first compound mental wealth. You cannot attract riches in the outer world until you believe in them so deeply that they become the own reality in your inner world. Andrew Carnegie was not born into riches. He began in a factory, a poor boy earning pennies. But he compounded his belief every day. He repeated to himself the vision of wealth, the vision of power, the vision of contribution. And though the world laughed, though doubt whispered, though critics mocked, the repetition of his faith compounded into steel mills, libraries, and the legacy of one of the greatest fortunes ever amassed. And Henry Ford, mocked for his ignorance, laughed at for his vision of a motor car for the common man. Do you think he succeeded by chance? No. He compounded his belief day after day, failure after failure, until even reality bent to his persistence. The Rockefeller, accused, condemned, vilified, yet never shaken. What gave him strength? The compound of definite purpose. Now hear we, for this is the dividing line. Compound will happen whether you choose it or not. That is law. The only choice you have is whether you compound weakness or will compound strength. Every day you live without decision, you are compound drift. Every word of doubt you repeat is compound poverty. Every hour you waste in distraction is compound mediocrity. But every declaration of faith compounds confidence. Every disciplined act compounds power. Every definite thought compounds fortune. You say you want riches, then I ask you, what are you compounding? Look at your habits, your words, your thoughts, and you will see the balance sheet of your future. The man who compounds hesitation will always be broke in courage. The man who compounds excuses will always be broke in achievement. But the man who compounds definite faith backed by definite action, will always find riches bowing before him. Buffett did not become the wealthiest investor because of a sin trade. He became so because of decades of compounded patience, compounded discipline, compounded alignment with principle. He allowed the law of compound to do the heavy lifting while others ran in circles. And so too can you. The difference is not scale, but submission. Will you submit to the law of compound? Will you repeat the right thoughts daily? Or will you repeat the lies of poverty until they own you? Repeat after me and burn it into your very marrow. I do not compound fear, I compound faith. I do not compound excuses, I compound execution. I do not compound poverty, I compound wealth. I am not the servant of drift, I am the master of direction. Every day I rise, I compound the man I was born to be. Say it not once, but until your soul believes it. Say it until your habits obey it. Say it until your life reflects it. For compound is always at work. The question is, what seed are you watering? Poverty or prosperity? Drift or destiny? Fear or faith? Understand this final truth. Wealth is not a mystery. Poverty is not fate. Both are products of compound. One compounds weakness, the other compounds power. And today, in this very hour, you must decide which law you obey.
For if you ignore this, if you drift one day longer, if you shrug and say, I already know this while your life shows otherwise, then you remain broke forever.
Not because the world denied you, but as you denied yourself. But if you seize it, if you take these words seed law, if you repeat them with fire, act on them with faith, and allow the silent rhythm of compound to build your fortune, then poverty will never yet find your door. This is the way, this is the law. Ignore it and you'll stay broke forever. Obey it and the word itself will compound your destiny. Most men hear the word compound and their minds shrink it to pennies, growing slowly in a bank. But this law is greater than banks, greater than finance, greater than Wall Street itself. For compound is the rhythm of creation, the way a seed becomes a tree, the way a thought becomes an empire, the way one disciplined act becomes a dynasty of achievement. And the tragedy is that most will never see it because they were trained to chase moments instead of movements, to demand instant harvest instead of daily planting, to worship the quick thrill instead of the slow build. And so they sell their future for the comfort of now, but not you. Yappy.
If you have ears to hear, because the man who grasps compound seizes the steering wheel of destiny itself.
He no longer measures his wealth by today's coin, but by the inevitable momentum of disciplined thought and repeated action. And that man cannot be stopped. Because every hour works for him, even while he sleeps. Every word spoken in faith echoes back to him with multiplied strength. Every decision compounded over time shapes him into something the world cannot deny. And this is why Buffett told the world again and again to be patient, to let compound work. Because he knew that patience was not weakness, but the very weapon of kings. A man who waits while moving, a man who trusts while planting, a man who compounds without demanding proof. Today that man will watch the world hand him riches tomorrow. For compound is invisible in the beginning. It looks like nothing, feels like nothing, produces nothing in sight. And so the weak abandon it. They cannot wait, they must touch the harvest before it has even formed. And they rate the law of increase by digging up the seed to see if it has grown. But the strong man, the rich man, the sovereign man, he does not dig the seed. He waters it, he shields it, he believes in it, he compounds it, and then one day the tree towers over him with fruit.
Superb. Even that patience was not weakness, but the very weapon of kings, a man who waits while moving, a man who trusts while planting, a man who compounds without demanding proof. Today that man will watch the world hand him riches tomorrow, but compound is invisible in the beginning. It looks like nothing, feels like nothing, produces nothing in sight, and so the weak abandon it. They cannot wait, they must touch the harvest before it has even formed, and they rake the law of increase by digging up the seed to see if it is grown. But the strong man, the rich man, the sovereign man, he does not dig the seed, he waters it, he shields it, he believes in it, he compounds it, and then one day the tree towers over him with fruit. So a bud he could never eat it in one lifetime, so a bud that his children and his children's children eat from it.
So good that the world calls him blessed, though they never saw the silent years of compound that built the abundance. In him lies the knife edge of destiny. You either compound excuses or compound excellence. You either repeat the language of defeat until it brands itself into your identity, or you repeat the language of faith until your spirit walks as a giant. We either practice the habits of drift until they chain you in mediocre, or we practice the habits of greatness until discipline is your very nature. And I tell you plain, the choice is yours, but the law will always obey the seed you give it. So decide now, not tomorrow, not after the mood is right, not after the world approves. Decide this very hour that we compound faith, compound purpose, compound riches, and life itself will bend to that decision, for the law of compound is eternal, and no man escapes it, not the wise, not the fool, not the rich, not the poor are bound by it, and on those who choose their seed with intention rhymes, while the rest live bewildered, crying fate, crying luck, crying injustice, when in truth they were compound drift all along, and the fire of this truth should burn in your bones until every wasted hour becomes unbearable, until every careless word feels like theft from your own future, until every excuse tastes like poison in your mouth.
Once you see compound, at least you know its law. You cannot return to ignorance without choosing poverty with open eyes. So say it now with power, with thunder in your chest. I do not waste my days. I compound them. I do not waste my mind. I compound it. I do not waste my energy. I compound it. I am a builder, and every moment is a brick. Every thought is a seed. Every action is a ripple. And compounded together, they form the empire of my destiny. Nothing is wasted. Nothing is small. Everything grows. Everything multiplies, because I obey the law of compounding. And by that law, I cannot remain poor. By that law, I cannot remain small. By that law, I must rise, and so I will. Compound is not just about money. It is about mind. It is about soul. It is about character. For the same law that multiplies dollars, multiplies discipline, multiplies wisdom, multiplies power. And this is why weak men stay weak, because they compound excuses. They repeat them daily until they no longer even notice them. But no excuse becomes identity. But the man who understands this law decides that even in failure, he compounds something greater. He compounds resilience. He compounds lessons. He compounds faith. And so every stumble becomes seed. Every delay becomes training. Every loss becomes investment in his unstoppable future, because nothing is wasted when you decide to compound with intention.
This is the great dividing line between those who drift and those who dominate. The drifter thinks life is random, that effort is wasted, that patience is punishment. But the builder knows that effort is never lost, it is stored. Patience is never wasted, it is rewarded, and faith is never ignored, it is answered. And that is why Buffett could look at a collapsing market while the world screamed in panic and still say with calm certainty that wealth was being built, not lost, because he understood that compound works beneath the surface long before it reveals itself. And the man who trusts the unseen harvest, he always outlasts the one who chases the visible shortcut. And in is the bitter truth. Most will never taste this wealth because they refuse to stay long enough to let compound work. They quit on the verge of multiplication. They walk away at the very moment the law was about to reward them. They break the cycle and reset themselves to zero again and again, which is why their life always looks like starting over, like endless beginnings with no completion. And yet those who endure, who refuse to uproot the seed, who water it daily with belief, with discipline, with purpose, will wake one day to find that life has bent itself to their faith, that opportunity has grown around them like a forest, that their very name carries weight, like currency, because compound does not just build accounts.
It builds reputation, it builds authority, it builds influence, and when the law matures in your life, men may seek your counsel, doors reopen before you knock. Wealth will chase you instead of you chasing it. As compound magnifies all things, it takes the smallest whisper of faith and turns it into a roar. It takes a single step of discipline and turns it into an unbreakable march. It takes $1 invested with clarity and turns it into a fortune that endures generations. And so I tell you this with gravity: guard what you repeat, because what you repeat you are compound, and what you compound will become your destiny. If you repeat weakness, weakness will rule you. If you repeat fear, fear will haunt you. If you repeat doubt, doubt will paralyze you. But if you repeat faith, faith will strengthen you. If you repeat decisiveness, decisiveness will define you. If you repeat wealth and thought and deed, wealth must appear before you, because the law does not negotiate, it only delivers what you command with persistence. And now you must ask yourself, what am I compound daily? What thoughts, what actions, what habits, what words am I multiplying? Because whether you are awake to it or not, compound is awake. It never sleeps, it never ceases, it never forgets, and the law will either reward you or crush you depending on your seed. And so today you must burn the old program.
You must strip the soil of weeds. You must tear down the cycle of excuses and plant deliberately the seeds of empire. Decide what you repeat. Decide what you multiply. Decide what you command. Because one day you face the results, and the only question that matter is not what did fate give you, but what did you compound for. In that answer lies the truth of every fortune and every failure. And so let this hour be the one when you stop drifting, stop waiting, stop begging, and start compound, like a king, like a builder, like a man who knows the law is on his side and will not be mocked. For they surely as the sun rises, you reap what you repeat. But let these strike even deeper, for too many of you think compound is a gain of numbers, a trick of finance, a clever investor tool, when in truth it is the oldest law of creation itself, written into the very bones of the universe. For every tree that towers above the earth began as a seed multiplied by patience. Every river that carved its canyon did so by the compound of a single drop, repeated for ages. Every mountain of wealth, every dynasty of power, every legacy of greatness was forged not in one dramatic act, but in the repetition of small acts held to with faith. And so I tell you, the man who mocks small beginnings is the man who condemns himself to small endings. But he refuses to believe that multiplication hides within the ordinary, within the daily, within the unseen. And Buffett himself once said, someone is sitting in the shade today because someone planted a tree long gone, and that is not that about money. It is about vision. It is about understanding that your duty is not to reap immediately, but to plant relentlessly, knowing that the law cannot betray you. If you persist, yet it is the curse of the impatient soul. He demands harvest before the season. He curses the soil when the roots are still forming. He abandoned the field when the fruit is almost ready, and then he points to life and says, it failed thee, when in truth it was he who failed the law. For compound does not fail men, fail compound. And this is why wealth escapes the multitudes, not because they cannot earn, but because they cannot endure. They do not hold to the invisible law long enough to see it bend reality in their favor, and so the man who grasps this, who truly sees it, walks differently. He is calm in storms because storms cannot rake, compound. They can only strengthen it. He is quiet in prosperity because he knows the wealth he sees is only a fraction of what is still forming beneath the surface. He is relentless in labor.
Here goes, each act is magnified, multiplied, and returned in time. And when you understand this, you stop asking if success is possible. You begin asking instead, what am I compound today?
But the truth is, you are always compounding, whether in strength or weakness, in clarity or confusion, in courage or in fear. Every repeated thought, every repeated word, every repeated act is adding to your account. And one day the bill will come due, and you face not what you wish for, not what you prayed for in haste, but what you repeated without fail. And that is why faith must be daily, discipline must be daily, decision must be daily. Because these things repeated are unstoppable. They become momentum, and momentum becomes destiny, and destiny cannot be denied. And so I ask you, if you were to multiply your present habits for the next decade, would you be proud of what appears or horrified at what grows? For compounding will not adjust for your comfort. It'd only magnify your choices. It'd only deliver your seeds in multiplied form. And so the man of wisdom plants deliberately, waters faithfully, guards fiercely, and waits patiently, because he knows he is not waiting on life. Life is waiting on him to stop interrupting the law, stop quitting, stop changing bench every week, and start aligning thought, word, and action until the world itself must bend. Because compound, when honored, is more powerful than armies, more certain than governments, more enduring than empires. And so the man who commands it becomes untouched. His wealth may fluctuate in appearance, his fortunes may rise and fall in the eyes of the shallow, but beneath it the law is working, brooding, multiplying, securing, until his life itself becomes proof of principle, and his legacy becomes the eternal eld of a man who dared to persist. But terrors most men mince the mark. They think wealth is only what is seen, a stack of coins, a balance in the bank, a company stamp with their name. But I tell you plainly, the greater wealth is unseen, for compound is not confined to money. It is the law of growth, and it touches the mind, the spirit, the body, the reputation, and the destiny of a man. If you compound doubt, then doubt becomes your master. If you compound fear, then fear becomes your cage. If you compound hesitation, then hesitation becomes your tombstone. But if you compound courage, courage becomes your shield. If you compound faith, faith becomes your engine. If you compound decision, decision becomes your crown. Every small act is a seed, every repeated seed a harvest, every harvest a destiny. Men who understand this do not complain about small beginnings. They celebrate them, for they see in the smallest seed the entire forest. More certain than governments, more enduring than empires. And so the man who commands it becomes untouched. His wealth may fluctuate in appearance, his fortunes may rise and fall in the eyes of the shallow, but beneath it the law is working, brooding, multiplying, securing, until his life itself becomes proof of principle, and his legacy becomes the eternal eld of a man who dared to persist. But terrors most men mince the mark. They think wealth is only what is seen, a stack of coins, a balance in the bank, a company stamp with their name. But I tell you plainly, the greater wealth is unseen, for compound is not confined to money. It is the law of growth, and it touches the mind, the spirit, the body, the reputation, and the destiny of a man. If you compound doubt, then doubt becomes your master. If you compound fear, then fear becomes your cage. If you compound hesitation, then hesitation becomes your tombstone. But if you compound courage, courage becomes your shield. If you compound faith, faith becomes your engine. If you compound decision, decision becomes your crown. Every small act is a seed, every repeated seed a harvest, every harvest a destiny. Men who understand this do not complain about small beginnings, they celebrate them, for they see in the smallest seed the entire forest. Men who honor this law do not ridicule themselves when progress looks invisible. They smile, for they know the roots are thickening underground, unseen but unstoppable. It is the fool who mocks patience, but it is the wise who multiply it into greatness. Warren Buffett himself did grow rich because he gambled, but because he honored the smallest return compounded for the longest time. He did worship sudden fortune. He worshiped the discipline of staying in the law, and in time, the law made him master over fortunes. E8 is the sharp edge of truth.
If you will not sit with small growth, you will never hold great growth. If you cannot endure the years of roots, you will never enjoy the decades of fruit. The law of compound does not care if you are rich or poor, famous or unknown, strong or weak. It will serve you faithfully if you serve it faithfully. And it did destroy you silently if you betray it with inconsistency. That is why I tell you, check your repetitions, check your habits, check your speech, for you are compound daily whether you see it or not. Your mornings compound into your years, your words compound into your self-image, your choices compound into your fate. A man is not judged by what he does once, but by what he repeats without fail. That is why legacy is not an act, it is a rhythm, and compound is the metronome of destiny.
So let me ask you now, if your present habits multiplied tenfold, what empire would rise or what ruin would emerge? Would you be proud of the man you have built or ashamed of the drift you allowed?
For compound is mercilessly fair. It'd never give you what you want. It'd always give you what you repeat.
And so the man who sees this does not waste his energy on envy or on wondering why fortune has smiled on another.
He knows the answer is written in repetition, in persistence, in the unbroken chain of small decisions held to until the world itself bows. And this man is unstoppable, because while others wait for luck, he compounds. While others beg for shortcuts, he compounds. While others quit at the first sight of delay, he compounds. And by the time the crowd awakens, he has already built an empire so vast they hail it luck, when it was law along. But hear ye well, for the greatest tragedy of compound is not in money lost, but in lives wasted. A man compounds not on his savings, but his habits, his values, his example.
Children do not inherit only the estate of their fathers, they inherit the repetitions of their fathers.
If you compound excuses, they will repeat excuses. If you compound fear, they the fear. If you compound indecision, they will build a family of drift. But if you compound discipline, you gift discipline.
If you compound courage, you give them courage. If you compound faith, you establish faith is the foundation of a household. And what greater legacy can a man leave than a rhythm of greatness that outlives his own breath? The barns of Rockefeller may crumble, the lights of Edison may fade, the machines of Ford may rust, but their habits, their ways, their laws live on, compound in every mind that studies them, in every business that borrows their rhythm, in every invention that still echoes their courage. This is why mediocrity is not just a private defeat, it is generational theft. To live small when greatness was in you is to rob your sons and daughters of their inheritance. To excuse weakness is just the way I am, is to chain your grandchildren before they are born. But to choose law, to walk in compound discipline, is to build inheritance greater than land, greater than gold, greater than stocks and bonds. It is to build a bloodline of dominion, a name spoken with weight, a path cleared for every soul that follows. You want to change your family forever? Then understand this, you need not leave them millions, you need only leave them a law, a rhythm, a compound pattern of faith and discipline so exact, so unbroken that they cannot escape its power. For compound in spirit is stronger than compounded in finance. $1 billion be spent in one lifetime, but one man's faith compounded across generations will birth kings, thinkers, builders, leaders, and soldiers of destiny. Mark these words, the inheritance of a righteous man is not wealth alone, it is rhythm. And that rhythm is built in secret, in silence, in daily repetitions unseen by the crowd but burned into the identity of his children. So I tell you now, what are you compound in the eyes of those who watch you? Do you curse or do you bless? Do you complain or do you build? Do you quit or do you endure? For every word you say, every act you repeat, every discipline you hold is compounding in them. And long after you are gone, they will walk in it. You are not just compounding your wealth, you are compounding your family future. You are not just training your mind, you are training your bloodline. You are not just stacking coins, you are stacking destinies. This is why I tell you again, compound is not that option, it is the law of a creation. Ignore it, and you not only stay broke, you will breed brokenness. Obey it, and you not only grow rich, you will grow kingdoms. The crowd may laugh, the weak may sneer, the lazy may delay, but the law remains. What you repeat multiplies. And when you hold that truth until it burns in your bones, you will never again waste a day.
For you know that every sunrise is a seed, every word is water, every act is sunlight, and every repetition is destiny compound. Consider this truth: compound is not merely a financial law. It is the silent architect of civilization. Every empire that rose did so not by one act, but by repeated acts compounded over decades. Rome did not dominate the world by a Siam battle. It rose through the repetition of discipline in its legions, the repetition of laws enforced, the repetition of roads built, trade routes guarded, order established. What is an empire if not compounded will? And what is a fallen empire if not compounded neglect? The same pattern that governs your pennies governs nations. When leaders compound corruption, the people inherit ruin. When they compound order, the people inherit prosperity. History is nothing more than compounded thought, manifested in flesh across centuries. And you, though one man, participate in this law. You may think yourself small, but every habit you compound ripples outward. The ideas you repeat, the words you echo, the fears you obey, all are seeds that plant themselves into the soil of society. One man with discipline influences 10 influence 100, and 100 shift a generation. Never underestimate the momentum of repetition. Every revolution was first a repeated whisper, every reformation a repeated word, every awakening a repeated truth. And so I tell you, when you master compound, you are not only shaping your fortune, you are shaping history. Look again at the giants of industry: Carnegie, Ford, Rockefeller. Did they simply make money? No, they compounded entire systems. Carnegie compounded steel into skylines. Ford compounded machinery into modern transportation. Rockefeller compounded order into oil distributions. Systems so vast that the world itself bent to their repetitions. And Warren Buffett, what did he do? He compounded patience. He compounded discipline. He compounded a single idea. Never interrupt compound unnecessarily. That law made him richer than kings, but richer still, it made him sovereign over himself. For the true wealth of compound is not measured in dollars, it is measured in mastery. The man who compounds is the man who commands. The man who drifts, who breaks rhythm, who delays, is the man who obeys. Now hear read, for this is the turning page. Most men believe compound is slow, boring, tedious, and so they chase lightning, hoping for instant strikes. But lightning is chaos. It destroys as quickly as it arrives. Fire built by friction, by repeated rubbing of stone against stone, that fire endures. The farmer knows this. He does not plant once and expect harvest tomorrow. He plants, waters, waits, weeds, and repeats. And through this repetition, the invisible law of compound turns small seeds into unstoppable forests. Do you not see? Compound is the closest thing to immortality a man can touch on this earth, for it turns the temporary into the enduring, the weak into the unshakable, the small into the vast. Think of your own life. Every word you repeat to yourself is compound. Tell yourself daily that you are weak, and weakness will multiply.
Tell yourself daily that you are poor, and poverty will take root. Tell yourself daily that you are lazy, and your body will obey. But tell yourself daily that you are a builder, that you are a man of discipline, that you are destined for dominion, and watch as your subconscious bends reality to meet the rhythm of your thought. You are a walking reflection of what you have compounded over years. If you are lost, it is because you compounded drift. If you are strong, it is because you compounded discipline. If you are rich, it is because you compounded decisions. If you are broke, it is because you compounded excuses. The law does not fail. It only reflects. So let me declare this plainly. Your future is not written by fates. It is written by compounding. And if you would seize control of your destiny, you must seize control of your repetitions. Guard them in treasure. Examine them as scripture. Refuse to waste them on idle pleasures, fruitless distractions, or words of defeat. For every repetition is a brick, and those bricks will build either a palace or a prison. You cannot stop build. You can only choose what you build. And if you ignore this, if you dismiss this law, you will not simply remain as you are. You will decay. For compound is not neutral. It moves forward or backward. It builds or it erodes. It multiplies greatness or it multiplies regret. And now I ask you directly, what will you compound? Will you compound excuses until they bury you? Or will you compound faith until the world cannot deny you? Will you compound fear until your children inherit it? Or will you compound courage until your bloodline rises in dominion? The law does not wait. It is already moving. Every word you speak, every act you repeat, every thought you entertain is being multiplied this very moment. You cannot opt out. You can only choose whether you remain broke in thought and spirit, or whether you rise, bend this law to your aim, and command riches, order, and legacy into existence. Most men imagine compound A numbers on a chart, rising slowly, curving upward into wealth. But I tell you, compound is deeper, older, more spiritual than finance. It is the reflection of the Creator's own law, written into every part of nature. Look to the rivers that carve vows. They do not strike once and retreat. They move again and again, drop after drop, until mountains bow to water. Look to the stars. Their light does not blaze for a moment and vanish. It burns continuously, day after day, compound energy into brilliance that outlives empires. Look to your own breath, inhale, exhale, repeated without pause, building a life from rhythm. Without compound, there is no creation. Without compound, there is no continuation. The very fact that you exist proves the law. Repetition builds reality. And so I warn you, if you ignore compound, you are not only rejecting financial growth, you are rebelling against the structure of creation itself. You cannot be in harmony with divine order while despising discipline, while mocking repetition, while abandoning the daily grind of thought, word, and action. Men who scoff at compound call it slow. They call it boring. But what is boredom but the mind of a fool, refusing to see beauty in the eternal? God himself made the sunrise daily, not once. He made the season cycle, not flash. He built life through compound. And yet you, with breath in your lungs, think yourself too clever, too impatient to obey the very law that sustains galaxies. That arrogance is why most men remain broke, not in pocket alone, but in spirit. Let us descend to the heart of the matter. Compound requires faith. You cannot compound if you do not believe tomorrow will honor today. That is why most abandon it. They cannot see beyond their own impatience. They demand fruit where only seed has been sown. They dig up the soil each morning to see if anything has sprouted, killing the root before it takes hold. But the wise man plants, waters, guards, and waits. He repeats. He refuses to interrupt the law. He obeys patience, and patience delivers him harvest. Buffett himself said his wealth is the result of time, not genius. That is the lesson. Most men are so brilliant in bursts that they die poor, while the quiet plodder who compounds steadily outlives and outgains them. Money. And it lies the knife edge. Compound works in every direction. It is neutral to your intent. If you compound excuses, you inherit chains. If you compound fear, you pass down cowardice. If you compound lust, you rot. If you compound indiscipline, your children eat the fruit of your waste. The law does not ask permission, it simply multiplies what you feed it. So the question is never one, does compound work? The question is, What am I compound? Every choice you repeat, every thought you allow, every indulgence you excuse, Cal multiplies. The alcoholic did not wake drunk one day. He compounded escape sip by sip. The giant of industry did not wake rich one day. He compounded discipline, deal by deal. Both men obeyed the same law. One compounded destruction, the other compounded dominion. Now think, what if you chose deliberately? What if instead of drifting into repetitions of waste, you forged repetitions of power? What if instead of compound doubt, you compounded decision? Instead of compounded fear, you compounded courage. Instead of compound distraction, you compounded focus. Do you not see? In 7 days you would feel shift. In 7 weeks you would build foundation. In 7 months you would carry momentum. In 7 years you would wield legacy. And oh, from one decision to guard your repetitions, to treat every act, no matter how small, is seed in the soil of eternity. This is why Buffett guards his circle, his habits, his words. He knows compound does not pause when you sleep. It does not take holidays. It does not honor excuses. It is always working, always building. And so he feeds it with discipline, with patience, with faith in the long game. That is why his fortune dwarfs nations. That is why his name endures. Yeah, you, if you would walk this law, must decide the same. Guard your seed, guard your words, guard your thoughts. Do not speak carelessly. Do not act lazily. Do not drift idly. For every careless word is a seed, every idle act a seed, every drifting thought a seed. And what you repeat, you will one day stand inside damn reality. So I tell you, compound is not only a path to wealth, it is the path to destiny. It is how you shape your lineage, how you owe into generations you never see. The prayers you repeat, the discipline you enforce, the faith you declare, all will compound into children stronger than you, grandchildren freer than you, a bloodline cleansed of weakness and filled with order. Ignore this and you will stay broke. Not only in wallet, but in purpose, in legacy, in eternity. Honor this and nothing can stop you. Not poverty, not failure, not time itself. Compound is not bound to numbers alone. Riches of the mind, riches of character, riches of reputation, these two are forged by the same law. A man may hoard gold and lose it in a night, but the man who has compounded trust, discipline, and integrity over years carries a wealth untouchable by thieves. Think carefully on this. Buffett himself is not pursued merely because of his dollars. Many men have billions. He is pursued because he has compounded credibility, patience, and clarity for decades until his very name carries more weight than markets. The world bends to him not because of his bank account, but because of his compounded character. Now let me tell you a secret. Authority is nothing more than compound obedience to your own standards. Each day you hold fast to your word. Each day you refuse the easy compromise. Each day you align action with principle. You add another layer of unshakable stone to your foundation. Men may not notice in the beginning. They may call you stubborn, dull, too strict. But over time, the law reveals itself. 10 years of obedience produces gravity. 20 years produces magnetism. 30 years produces legend. The same law that doubles pennies into fortunes multiplies consistency into legacy. But beware, the law does not discriminate. The man who compounds dishonor will rot in his own stench. Lie once, and it is small. Lie daily, and it is identity. Betray once, and it stems. Betray repeatedly, and it becomes bloodline. What are you repeating? That is your true wealth. The market cannot take it, nor can it save you. The law compounds silently whether for you or against you. This is why the greatest men do not chase noise. They are careful with their mornings, deliberate with their nights. They do not waste the bookend of their days because they know that the thoughts they allow at sunrise and the whispers they permit at sleep are the strongest seeds of all. Repetition in those hours compounds faster than any coin because it penetrates the subconscious. The successful know that you are programming whether you admit it or not. Every repeated thought becomes architecture. Every repeated habit becomes cement. Every repeated declaration becomes command. Think now of your own life. What do you repeat? You say, I am tired. That compounds. You say I can't. That compounds. You say I'll start tomorrow. That compounds. And so the wall of your own limitation grows higher each year until you can no longer see over it. But if instead you declared, I am disciplined, I am power, I am destined, and if you said it not once but daily, not that wish but law, then repetition would bend the world to your new identity. Speak it, live it, repeat it, and in time it would appear before you, reality too solid to deny. The farmer understands this more than the scholar. He knows the law does not plant once and wait in despair. He plants, waters, weeds, and repeats every season, every year. The yield is not magic, it is compound. So too must you live. Plant thought, water with discipline, guard with faith, repeat without fail. The field of your life will obey, not today, not tomorrow, but inevitably, inevitably, inevitably. The only thing that can rob you of harvest is your own impatience. You have heard men say, Buffett wealth is luck, fools. They mock what they cannot comprehend. What they call luck is compound seen too late. They laugh when he buys and holds. They sneer when he refuses to chase trends. Then they gape in wonder when decades turn small sums into dynasties. What they missed was the law unfolding slowly, silently, faithfully. But you, if you listen, if you obey, can see it now. You can walk it now. You can decide today to begin compound, not just your money, but your mind, your integrity, your destiny. And this is where I drive the blade deep. If you ignore compound, you have already chosen poverty. Poverty of money, poverty of honor, poverty of soul. Because every man is compound something whether he chooses or not. If you do not plant wealth, you are planting waste. If you do not plant discipline, you are planting disorder. If you do not plant faith, you are planting fear. You cannot escape the law, you can only direct it. And those who direct it with precision rule nations, while those who ignore it beg for scraps. So decide, and decide now. This law is eternal. Compound is build you into something, whether you like it or not. And the only question heaven asks of you is, what are you compound? Do not wait for perfect soil. Plant now. Do not wait for applause. Repeat now. Do not wait for certainty. Obey now. For once you harness this law, your life will not just grow. It will multiply beyond recognition. And that, my friend, is destiny made flesh. Compound faith is the secret most men never taste, because they confuse faith with hope. Hope is weak, it waits, it wishes, it drifts. Faith is different. Faith repeats a vision until it becomes law within the soul. Faith does not check the clock, does not count the steps, does not ask for reassurance. It obeys as if the outcome is already sealed. And because the law of compound cannot distinguish between a number and a belief, it multiplies the vision you hold with the same fidelity. It multiplies pennies in a bank. Understand this deeply. Your life right now is the compounded result of your dominant beliefs. If you believe you are unlucky, that belief has compounded into choices, into posture, into speech, into missed opportunities. If you believe you are average, that belief has multiplied in your habits until your life reflects ordinariness. But if you believe you are chosen, if you believe you are sovereign, if you believe you are here with assignment, then that belief will not sit still. It will multiply into courage, into doors opening, into voices echoing your own command. That is the compound of faith. Think of the great ones. Carnegie did not build steel on wages alone. He compounded a belief that his fortune would be vast, and that belief guided his hand into every investment, every decision. Edison did not light the world with glass and wire. He compounded a belief that the impossible was simply the unfinished, and that belief drove him through 10,000 failures. Rockefeller compounded faith in order, in discipline, in divine stewardship, until his very fortune became an institution. Men do not become titans by talent. They become titans by compound in faith long enough that it manifests an empire. And so must you. If you rise each morning repeating fear, the law obeys. If you rise repeating faith, the law obeys. It does not care who you are. It does not bend to pity. It does not bow to excuses. It is eternal, impartial, exact. What you plant and repeat multiplies. Let me warn you though, faith is fragile when first planted. Like a young seedling, it can be crushed by the boots of doubt, by the winds of criticism, by the weight of your own hesitation. This is why you must guard it. You must plant it in silence.
You must protect it from the noise of men who do not understand. Speak to yourself first, not to the crowd. Let it grow roots unseen. Let it draw strength beneath the soil of your discipline before it rises into the open. Once its roots are deep, no storm can kill it. This is why I tell you, build quietly. Let calm palm work where eyes cannot see. Faith does not need applause to grow. It needs repetition, guarded thought, and unshaken decision. The man who tells the world too soon invites the world to trample his roots. But the man who guards his vision until it is strong reveals it only when it is too large to be ignored. That is strategy. That is mastery. And when vision matures, when faith has been compounded for years, something miraculous occurs. You no longer chase opportunity. Opportunity chases you. Doors open unasked. Voices speak your name in rooms you've never entered. Men trust you before they meet you. This is the magnetism of compounded faith. It is invisible law bending the visible world in your favor. Think of Buffett himself. He does not knock on doors begging for investors. They knock on his. He does not scream his worth into the world. The world proclaims it for him. Why? Because for decades he has compounded the same principles, discipline, patience, value, and those beliefs have matured into a magnetism that wealth itself obeys. He no longer chases money. Money chases him. You too must arrive here when your faith compounds. When your vision compounds, you will see the same law unfold. You will feel it in your bones. You will walk into rooms and sense that destiny has arrived first to prepare the way. You will speak, and others will feel the weight of years of belief behind your words. That is not charisma. That is compounded faith made flesh. But mark me clear, this is no overnight work. The law is patient. It is slow at first, almost mocking in its invisibility. Days pass with no fruit, weeks with no result. If the foolish man gives up, saying the law is false, but the wise man repeats. He repeats through silence, through delay, through ridicule, through drought. He holds to his vision the if it is already real. And then, without warning, the curve bends. The invisible becomes visible. The small becomes mighty. The tiny harvest becomes abundance too vast to measure. This is why compounded solve the eighth wonder of the world. Because men see the beginning and mock, but they never endure long enough to witness the explosion. Compound faith is no different. Endure, repeat, obey, and in time, the law will bow to you. Now listen closely, for this is where most men fail. They try to compound faith while still compound fear. They plant both seeds, water both daily, and wonder why their harvest is confusion. You cannot serve two masters. You cannot speak wealth in the morning and doubt at night. You cannot declare destiny and repeat defeat. One must die. Choose which one you starve. Choose which one you feed. For whichever you repeat, that is the one that will multiply. So I command you now, speak only faith, act only on vision, repeat only destiny. For every repetition is another turn of the wheel, another doubling of the seed, another acceleration of your harvest. Ignore this, and you stay broke forever. Not get broke in money, but broke in spirit, broke in courage, broke in purpose. But obey this, and you live in riches no thief can steal, no market can shake, no enemy can undo. This is the law. Discipline is the soil laid compound grows its richest harvest. A man may plant the seed of belief, but without daily tending, the weeds of distraction choke it before it takes root. I've watched it in every generation, men who speak loudly of ambition,
who dream big and post bold promises, yet falter when the morning comes, when the work is quiet and the applause is gone. They forget that compound is not a sprint, nor a gamble, nor a moment of luck. It is the daily stroke of the hammer, the steady drip of water carving stone, the farmer ritual of sowing even when clouds hang heavy. That is discipline. And discipline is what multiplies belief into destiny. Buffett himself never claimed genius. He claimed consistency. He rose each day with the same habits, the same focus, the same questions guiding his decisions. What he built was not the result of rare bursts of brilliance, but the compounded effect of ordinary acts repeated faithfully for decades. While others searched for shortcuts, he sharpened his edge in patience. While others shifted with trends, he deepened his roots in principle. And because of this, his harvest was not just wealth, but endurance. For wealth gained without discipline is wealth already lost, but wealth gained with discipline becomes generational, unshaken by time. Do you understand this? Every small act you repeat becomes a brick in your future. Every day you choose to rise early, to work when no one applauds, to read when others distract themselves, you are compound discipline. It may feel small, invisible, even meaningless, but compound never reveals itself at first. It hides, it mocks, it tests your endurance. And then, when most men have given up, it explodes. What seemed worthless suddenly towers into greatness. This is why you must never despise small beginnings. Every giant oak was once a seed. Every empire was once a single idea. Every titan was once a boy repeating small, disciplined acts in silence. Let us speak of Henry Ford. He was not educated in the universities of the elite. He was a farmer's son, tinkering with machines long after others mocked his obsession. He failed repeatedly, prototypes collapsing, investors fleeing. But Ford did not chase validation. He compounded discipline. Day after day, he returned to the workshop, adjusting, refining, repeating. He built quietly, faithfully, until one day the Model T rolled onto the scene and the world was forced to notice. His discipline had compounded into industry. His faith had multiplied into empire. Or take Edison. Thousands of failures did not define him. Repetition did. 10,000 experiments, 10,000 lessons, 10,000 days that another man would have quit. But Edison believed in the law. He knew each attempt was not wasted, but added to the compound sum of knowledge. Or when the light finally burned, it was not a miracle. It was the inevitable harvest of discipline, compounded beyond the imagination of ordinary men. That is what you must understand. Compound discipline does not produce random miracles, it produces inevitable results. Now, let us draw close. Look at your own days. Look at your own habits. Are they compounding toward destiny or toward drift? Every night you waste in indulgence compounds. Every excuse you repeat compounds. Every hesitation compounds. And in time it builds a harvest of regret. But so too does every small victory compound. Every page read compounds into wisdom. Every dollar invested compounds into wealth. Every repetition of faith compounds into unshakable belief. The law does not judge, it simply obeys. The man who wastes receives waste multiplied. The man who builds receives greatness multiplied. Sammy Freedom compounded discipline. Day after day he returned to the workshop, adjusting, refining, repeating. He built quietly, faithfully, until one day the Model T rolled onto the scene and the world was forced to notice. His discipline had compounded into industry. His faith had multiplied into empire. Or take Edison. Thousands of failures did not define him. Repetition did. 10,000 experiments, 10,000 lessons, 10,000 days that another man would have quit. But Edison believed in the law. He knew each attempt was not wasted but added to the compound sum of knowledge. That when the light finally burned, it was not a miracle. It was the inevitable harvest of discipline compounded beyond the imagination of ordinary men. That is what you must understand. Compound discipline does not produce random miracles. It produces inevitable results. Now, let us draw close. Look at your own days. Look at your own habits. Are they compounding toward destiny or toward drift? Every night you waste in indulgence compounds. Every excuse you repeat compounds. Every hesitation compounds, and in time it builds a harvest of regret. But so too does every small victory compound. Every page read compounds into wisdom. Every dollar invested compounds into wealth. Every repetition of faith compounds into unshakable belief. The law does not judge, it simply obeys. The man who wastes receives waste multiplied. The man who builds. This is why I tell you, libido, every small act is sacred. Because it is. The universe is a bookkeeper. It records without error. Every choice, every repetition, every word spoken into the silence, none are lost. They are tallied, multiplied, and delivered back as she harvest. So what are you planting? What will you demand of the law? For it pay you exite you and growed, not in wishes, but in disciplined repetition. The crowd waits for motivation. The sovereign builds discipline. The crowd hopes for miracles. The sovereign compounds small acts until miracles become routine. The crowd seeks applause. The sovereign labors in silence until his results roar louder than any words. And when the sovereign finally reveals his harvest, the crowd calls it luck, calls it genius, calls it unfair. But it is none of these. It is law. It is compound. It is discipline multiplied into destiny. Let it take you into the farmer field one last time. He does not wait for perfect weather. He sows. He does not fear storms. He tends. He does not waste time explaining his crops to doubters. He works. And while others laugh at empty soil, he returns daily until the harvest cannot be denied. That is the man you must become. Silent, steady, relentless. A builder of habits so unshakable that discipline compounds into greatness without your permission, without your awareness, until one day you look back and see that you have become the man others only spoke of becoming. So here is the command. Stop calling yourself lazy. Stop saying you lack motivation. These are lies, seeds planted by weakness. Replace them with truth. Speak it aloud until it roots. I am disciplined. I am consistent. I compound greatness daily. I am inevitable. Repeat this until it no longer feels like words but like bone and blood. For when you repeat it long enough, when you act on it daily, when you protect it through storms and silence, the law will obey, and discipline will become your destiny.